It's just my opinion on things, but the more I keep slowing down on everything, the more it just makes so much sense. It just makes so much sense. It just makes so much sense. If I had, now I'm no relationship counselor, but I would encourage to say I'm an empowering speaker or mentor. Let's give gratitude first to source, to the all, to everything, because I'm sitting here and I was like, I guarantee you the one or two things. First, how am I trying to get this out? The first and second things I feel that affects dynamics, relationship, business, anything, everything. I guarantee you it has a lot to do with rest. Resting, and most of the time probably hydration. Basically, reversing the dysregulated nervous system. Because I'm sitting here like, yo, when you think about the bullshit around hustle, that's not in alignment with divinity or in alignment with the bigger picture. Like you actually think you came here, oh shit, you actually think you came here to just grind, hustle? Every time I sit and ponder on this shit, I'm like, yo, this is not natural order. You know how you just heard the birds in the background? You think they hustling all day to go get some fucking, go feed their birds and stuff? Their baby birds? Or you think they're hustling just to build a nest all day? Think about this, because it's related to everything. Different species, different kingdoms, whatever you want to call them, realms, worlds, the animal world, bro, it's all connected. And if you pay attention, we're the ones that have been out of order. It's so funny because the other day I was washing dishes looking out the window and I saw this animal cruelty or abuse truck pull up. I said abuse. But I saw this animal cruelty truck pull up. And I was like, I never seen that. And it was like, if you have, blah, 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 known any animal to cruelty. And the first thing that came to mind was like, bitch, what do you think a zoo is? What do you think a zoo? I was like, yo, humans. The people y'all place in position, or even what we have supported, it's fucking, I told y'all before how people will sit here and get angry at me because they think I'm choosing, it's not suffering to me, but they think I'm causing their suffering, and this has been lived experiences because I choose not to go work for someone, or I choose not to go do certain things for, you know what I'm saying? You know how much emotion, energy, everything that it takes to go do that? That's why everyone's not ready for that journey. Because entrepreneurship is spiritual. Everyone's not ready for that journey, to go through their experience, to go through all the emotions, to even try to jump back into certain things. It's so much suffering we cause ourselves. Because again, I was reflecting just a minute ago, even about the fact of like, I had a memory come up about the shelter. It's like as soon as you come from the emergency shelter thing, as soon as you get in that position, you have to go in there, depending on what time of the night, wait in line, Certain things you can't, it's pretty much on someone else's time. Like, you can't bring certain stuff in. You can't eat your own food. Then what you're given, I don't recommend jail, but sometimes certain places, it's worse than jail food. A lot of shit is just like, the divine will take you through those experiences, and you'll think it's some of the worst shit ever, but it's some of the biggest and greatest lessons, so that you can realize that not only you can be inspired, but to also see the corruption and to see how people actually loop through that. And for some of them, that's all they have. You have people in there consistently for years that were complacent with like a room with multiple children. There was a lot of times I'm sitting here like, yo, what? So you're going through here, then you move into the what they call it, the family shelter aspect. You go from a bed back to the floor. Then they're asking you, because you don't know the duration, sometimes it takes weeks. For some cycles, weeks, well, I like to say cycles, month or two, for them to get a room with, bunk beds. So a lot of these things, you be like, is this real? Not even just that, it was just the fact that I was reflecting on how the fact of you actually told you have to get up. You're coming off a journey where you're going from bed. Again, think about rest and privacy. How this shit is so designed, has been designed for people not to rest, not to get insight. Because when you rest, you get ideas. When you rest is a form of action. Some people actually don't even believe rest is vital. You think anybody that came along with getting any type of insight on the bigger picture, getting insight from the divine, didn't get it in a dream state or meditation or stillness? Some type of self-realization or revelation, but yet and still rest. There has to be a balance. This country is, again, I told y'all, and other places as well, is they advocate on keeping people from resting. So I was sitting here like, yo, it bothered those people so much that I didn't want to get up and get positions. It bothered them because the reason being, it stripped their control, their illusion of control. It strips the false power that they have. Then that's when their true character or their insecurities peak, wanting to control and remove you or come at you and all types of things. Bully, And I've seen this happen with family, people's closest to you, people I've dated. And again, to me, it didn't make sense. Why? Because I was being called to rest. I was being called to sit down, to actually bring clarity and to be enlightened on the simple fact of I'm supposed to share this shit. I'm supposed to experience it first and share it. I told you, people were actually upset that I did not want to do what they feel I should do. They felt that I should do things on their time. And when you think about the bigger picture of a lot of this shit, a lot of people don't even do things on their own timing. They don't even exercise their free will. Think about that. They don't even know what that is. They don't even exercise their own free will. Now I know I don't talk about 3-4 different subjects, but again, the importance of rest is always going to be vital for me. Because like I said, I'll be in areas where the divine will show me so many things where this is why I'm inspiring you to keep going. This is why I keep telling you, you're not building this and doing this. You're not building an empire upon hustle. No, I'm not. You're not building something upon burning yourself out. Because those of you know that have gifts, spiritual gifts, and get spiritual insight and so forth, you know for sure how important rest is in a dream state, or how important it is where you're called to take a nap and boom, you get insight. Or your body simply needs to recover. That's what bothered people again when I was in that space, or in any space where I didn't want to. We don't realize that it's still a cycle or a loop. The energy overall is a loop. That's the biggest thing that's collapsing in all of this. It's the loop of not getting rest. And it bothers, you know what I'm saying? It's so funny because it makes me even more aware now why people wouldn't even support me. Because for one, if I'm building something towards it benefits us all, supports us all into building something, creating something where, for one, it prioritizes our rest. It prioritizes our well-being. So of course, I see why you would reject it. And I see why you wouldn't want to protect it. Because you're protecting your dysfunctional, your dysregulated, dysfunctional, you're willing to protect the dysfunctional system within you and externally, and you're also willing to protect the dysregulated nervous system that you want to convince me that I should be okay with, or I should just accept as if there's nothing the matter with that. Do y'all not realize we're recovering so much? In resting, I'm recovering so much in my body, mentally, emotionally, and so forth. Memories that come up that I have to be present and let go. So much shit comes up to where sometimes I was like, where did that come from? Why is this coming up? And I have to process it. Having to see the loop. I'm telling you, it doesn't make sense to nobody. This is why I don't care to follow other people, because I know what they're building that shit off of. Hustle. So yeah, that's why, like I tell you, I get so much more clarity. And that's kind of gonna be a part of knowing that why so many people would be opposed to what you're creating, because it's actually opposing their world that they live in. That's a part of like what being a visionary is, and accepting like the calling and purpose that's so much more bigger than you. Because at first, I thought I was just doing this for myself, but in actuality, I wouldn't ever want my kids to see my mother, to see my grandmother, to see all these people it was a lot I experienced. Like, I'm talking about people literally will attack you because you didn't want to do what they felt you should do. And see, that's the part of the journey too. You're gonna have to go through the experiences of keeping the vision, holding tight to it. And that's gonna be times where like you're gonna let go of it. You're gonna have experiences where you like, is this really worth it? Because you won't get the encouragement, you won't get a lot of the support. And I'm now seeing that how I'm grateful that everyone was a part of it. That's what I'm so appreciative of. I'll probably put this in PTG, post-traumatic growth, my new channel, simply because it's very relatable, because I'm able to have a greater appreciation, even for like the mother of my kids, like I've talked about before, like her having to, and it's not so much carry so much of the load, it's so much of like how her part is very significant to even sometimes where some people can assume that you're just being lazy or you're not getting things done. And that's gonna be a part of it because they don't know what's happening behind the scenes. That's so beautiful about divine and divinity in the bigger picture is that a lot of people don't know what's happening behind the scenes, so they will make assumptions to where they just assume you're not getting things done. But listen, that's the beauty of how when you are doing stone by stone, preparing things and so forth, it won't make sense. It's not supposed to. Even your own world, like at times where certain things I want to express, certain things I want to share, and I tell myself, I'm like, yo, I'm gradually, I had to accept more and more that no one really gets my world. And that's the peace, that's the acceptance, and also that's the gratitude that you can actually have. Because there are people in the world, people call them NPCs, I don't know, that's so funny to me, but they just have to have people a part of their world. But I'm learning more in my progress chart that it's for my own protection. When I'm called to be more in a space with myself. It was, I forgot which one it was, where I had something in a certain house, in a chart, my chart, where again, I could just naturally, intuitively pick up on things, and that this is a way of like my own protection. So it's not so much of just the isolation, it's so much of having to be in this position for the bigger picture, for the protection of just, again, my own protection is a protection of other people that are involved. And again, where you're distancing yourself, or like it's for your own protection. You know why. No one will know why but you. So again, and just reflecting, like, again, it also will reveal what other people are building towards. It also will remind you how unsatisfied and how they place their, how they are dependent on the system or dependent on certain things for validation, acceptance, and so forth. And that's the reminder that you have to lean more into your own inner and understanding, and eventually you can't even just hope and pray that they'll get it. If it's meant to, they'll get it in their timing or whatever it is. And for some people, it'll be a little too late if you already are progressing and moving forward. But for me, again, reflecting, like I said, one of the examples I can give you is like, if the divine is giving you insight and a vision towards something, it's also going to give you every detail of the people and persons' belief systems to where this is why they are a liability, or to what you're building, to what you're expounding on. This is why
They will not be a part. They're a part of the process. Well, they're because one thing about a part, they're it'll reveal the entanglement. Like one thing I've referenced before through a lot of growth is seeing how people who did not have a sense of security and built it off a false sense of security, they sometimes unconsciously will actually project their fears because your ability to being confident in who you are and continuously stay consistent in what you're doing. It threatens. It's a threat to their again their belief systems. It collapses everything, and you then will become a threat. Like for instance, think about a person who's on drugs and so forth, right? Substance abuse. I realized this growth that I became a threat to my mother's belief system, or how consistent she was in her escapism. So through growth, I start to become aware that I wasn't the problem at the core. The issue for her came in is to where when I was no longer a puppet, or going to be a puppet in her so-called grand scheme of things. And that was in all forms. You gotta realize, like, when I look at this shit from layers, this shit's wow. From the fact of when someone's dealing with something that early on in their life, when you're a child, substance abuse and so forth, they'll do anything to get that high. So think about it in an enlightened way, but more so on a lower vibration or high vibrational. I would do anything to protect, to actually, to protecting my peace is like getting that high off life. But when someone's low vibrational or stagnant, or accustomed to dysfunctionality or dysregulated nervous system, then our worlds will clash. So young, when you have a mother putting things in your name, doing things in any way to stay emotionally attached to you in an enmeshment way, or more so also, it's a way of them in any way seeing that they can benefit off of your pain, or your inability to become self-aware of their self-harming ways. So again, the money aspect, there was different layers of, in any way, seeing that she could get something just to get that high. So it happens on different layers. The last tier was, I spoke about using my name for years, as far as like for taxes, money like that, stuff like that. And again, it was in any way to obtain some type of profit to benefit her escapism. So the importance of going into when someone isn't aware of the loop that they're in, but when someone else becomes aware, this is the importance of emotional boundaries, mental, spiritual, physical boundaries. This again is a layered aspect that protects your internal world and your external world. So the importance of rest is very beneficial, because when people do not prioritize things as such, it's like their priority is to because their nervous system is wrecked, and also because their inability to prioritize rest, it will be a priority to make sure they disrupt your world too, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But then eventually they will make you out to be the villain or victim. So it's in so many other ways. I can give an example as well. It's like in relationships, like I said, if I was being called to rest because a lot of things were having to try to process the trauma. I realize now the bigger picture to being able to process the emotional body, things that were unprocessed. Because on this journey of healing or enlightenment, self-awareness, you're going to become aware of the different aspects of the body, the chakra systems, the things that have kept your generation in loop, that kept your generation from progressing, kept your generation or your lineage from ascending beyond what the world has given them or beyond what intergenerationally an imbalance happened. So of course, the women in my family and some of the women that I've dealt with, again, at the hands of probably something traumatic that they didn't know, subconscious fears and so forth, revealed their insecurities, their deepest insecurities, revealed their inability to have emotional boundaries or physical boundaries, even after said sexual traumas, not knowing how to say no. Because again, that's a whole deeper aspect to, again, people who have dealt with traumas sexually possibly can develop a lot of addictions. Sex being one, substance abuse, a lot of different things that it's like dopamine, things that their brain like processes or doesn't process the emotions or things around the actual experience itself. So, there's something there that doesn't click or something there, the body keeps a score. Book talks about that more and more. And that's why I feel like the loop that people, like they'll get to a point, but then they'll back out and go through it again. And this is why I'm so grateful for divine insight and awareness because, again, I'm able to, with more being with myself, because again, growing up, the loop that I was in was not knowing how to have emotional boundaries where I cared too much about how other people felt, where I lost my identity in their emotions. And also, and that was big, again, growing up in experiences where it's very vital for a young boy that any young man that grows into manhood, the importance of having emotional boundaries, because this will prevent you from circumstances, having children, bringing up the fact of how 90 or more % of a lot of murders that have happened or unalivings deal with something behind, I wanted to say loose-lipped woman, but really basically someone's emotional impulse to spread something, and then someone else who's emotionally impulsive or reactive comes along. No one has stability or emotional boundaries or security to where, boom, now this person is affected, now this person is affected. Again, a loop of trauma bonding and so forth. And I know that personally because I was put in so many predicaments, whether intentionally or unintentionally, from my childhood with my mom, from things happening with my sisters or things in the family, even the fact of like on the other end of things where you wanted to step up and step in, but no one knew the importance of really having emotional empathy. And that's one thing I had to learn through this whole process of being with people, living with relatives, or, all this imbalance to where now I'm much more structured and secure to know exactly what I'm walking into. because again, the restoration, the rehabilitation around what has seemed to be lost for so long. And it's not just the man aspect, it's also being able to mirror and see that also in the women that I was connected to, the women I'm no longer connected to. So many different things to where seeing why there was no support. And then again, through learning emotional security or learning the importance of emotional boundaries now, it was for my protection. Because I would be in things where I feel like I had to be a savior in preventing a woman from learning her own karma or lesson, preventing stepping in, and these are things that I gradually had to learn over time. Even my exchanges with my daughter is things where her emotions are so big to where I'm like, when I say I cannot give a fuck, it's more so like I've had to learn to balance between not absorbing so much of how, those who know intuitively know what I mean. Like when you're in a sensitive home or space to where you've had to learn and learn to integrate these principles of morals, or basically these internal belief systems on how to protect your peace, to protect your well-being in all aspects. Then you realize you cannot control this individual, nothing that they do and so forth, their actions and so forth. And I've learned that through, even with disconnecting from people on not just a sexual level, but there's emotional aspects to that that's tied to that. That's, when you start to recognize what you built with people, there's an emotion. And then that starts from childhood. That starts from the fact of like, with my mom, again, that was a process over time, even years. And so this is where it can be very challenging and difficult for men, and especially women, because of, it's much more different where a man is an internal nurturer, external warrior. So if he doesn't know the importance of nurturing that little boy to asserting his warrior aspect through the warrior can be in a healthy way. So I just say asserting himself healthily. So my learning experience from where I'm at now through gradually over time was realizing how much I wasn't nurtured, how much I was manipulated, deceived, so many different parts of that. Just basically because I saw women, growing up or experience with women, not all, but whether unconsciously or consciously, have this, what I know now, a deep hatred or internal hatred for themselves, or a father wound, or something that they did not know, to where someone didn't guide them through their subconscious fears, or knowing how to even be a nurturer. Because it's still important to nurture themselves, like to nurture the warrior inside of them. And if they didn't have a man to show them that, and a woman to also mirror that back to how she should be an external nurturer, then that's where a lot of imbalances, it's where a lot of things come from, to where, again, I see a deeper awareness to why in certain dynamics where, like, not having emotional boundaries, I would be so oblivious to certain connections where eventually, whether there was someone who was passive aggressive, which again will reveal that they didn't actually know how to be a nurturer, or they knew they could be a nurturer, but it would be to an extent or in a way of masking, to where eventually the internal warrior will come out and they wouldn't know how to manage it. They wouldn't know how to find that balance. And this is gradually through connections. And again, I had to see different versions of the distorted mother and how it affected me. in how I operated a distorted masculinity or wounded masculinity also. The distorted father, like not knowing how to have that balance. So now, in that, again, I will be so oblivious to connections, be glamored by the beauty externally of a woman rather than realizing like you know nothing about her eternal warrior, you know nothing about her lived experiences, or you know nothing about what she has held on to, haven't yet processed, haven't yet, acknowledged and so forth, never talked about. And eventually all I'm saying is it's a ticking time bomb. It's not to point people out to be bad or good. It's more so of the how much does she really truly honor the internal warrior? Some call it goddess, how much she internally honors who she really is in an authentic and integrative way, to where we're again seeing a distortion will be in a way growing up to see how abusive, manipulative someone can be from childhood. And me, I had to, I wanted so much to be, yes. You just sit up. Appreciate it.
The headphones are currently damaged.
Oh, I don't use them anyway. Yeah. I appreciate you. So, even with the fact of, what do you call it? So yeah, so I can tell you a lot what probably a lot of men go through, and it's not always the fact that like this isn't it doesn't have to be factual for you. I didn't know the importance of passive aggressiveness until I actually dealt with certain individuals. But I also knew that it was different versions to it, and it was different layers to a lot of things, to where it still endangered them and eventually would bring harm to everyone involved. So an example would be like how I see my mother would be, aggressive, like naturally projecting, through verbal abuse and so forth, physical abuse and all that. But then as I gradually went out into the world and experienced certain things, I saw another side. Well, hold on. Her passive aggressive would be going to a workspace and keeping the traumas or keeping things down that she dealt with, whether it's abuse and so forth, but go into a work setting and keep those things bottled up. So that can be a woman that you will know. You know, how they will mask themselves around what y'all call a boss or supervisor, whatever. And again, not really feel and honor what they're going through. So they become very robotic. But then at home, they will become very aggressive, or all these things come out because they're going right into something, tired, burnt out, and so forth. Not truly ever living out what they are, their dreams or goals or whatever. So then there was another layer to it, to where I met other women who came off so overly nicely. Overly nice. And this was a version to where whatever unresolved or whatever unprocessed or never acknowledged will eventually still come out in a triggering way where they probably had no idea that this version of them was there. So that's the scary part about where certain connections and so forth will actually karmically you can deal with in childhood, and then gradually as an adult, you learn this pattern of thinking like these behaviors are acceptable, but deep down in your core, you know they're not. You're like, no. So again, a part of me were in any way would try to escape through or from women that were very aggressive, like very like overly aggressive, distorted, and or have father wounds and so forth. And this took me a while, majority of like to my 30s, to recognize, because when you didn't have people to guide you through the importance of like, hey, that's not okay to be disrespected. That's not okay to be talked to. That's not okay to be treated like that, or because again, you're not taught the importance of value or worth or self-worth, self-care, and so forth. So these relationships are gradually implemented for you to actually learn through and learn something from. So again, the other versions that I would see play out through other women would be the fact that like they still will be internally very ignoring the internal warrior to be very aggressive. Eventually these things will come out in ways to where you will be caught off guard, but a lot of things that they were keeping bottled up or bottled down or pushed down most likely dealt with their own childhood, or most likely they were pushed into environments or forced into environments where they were silenced, or they couldn't use their voice, or they, and in certain ways, it's like certain things were removed from them if they did. Like you just never know someone's backstory. And also depending on whether outside of color and creed too, like depending on the upbringing, this also could have pushed them into the hustle aspect. Again, like I said, it's ways to actually initiate people into things to where they don't even know they're living out subconscious fears. They're not even aware that they're doing these things. And so with doing it for so long and you coming in and I'm presenting the fact of like, not only am I tired, but I have this, not so much game plan, but I have this vision. I've seen things. I have this awareness and so forth. And that in itself can be triggering. That in itself can make people revert back to what's familiar or remind them of something that not so much has anything to do with you, but I realize a lot of people's perceptions that they gain has nothing to do with you, but like I can only imagine the stuff that people will just conjure up or say like, well, that's how he got this. How did he get this and this and this and this? Well, there's so many things that you gotta realize. Like, I'm not really surprised at the shit that I hear or that I've heard already. Like I already know I've heard it all. I don't heard like just simply because of me going towards my goals. People call me a panhandler, narcissist, abuser, threatening to pull the rug from me, like up under me, meaning the foundation. So many different things where when you really just sit and observe, they're just showing you the shadow parts of themselves. That's what I gradually start to see with my mom. She was revealing the shadow parts where she couldn't get her way. And once you relate this to the fact of seeing adults as like little kids and stuff, you will realize like who truly is stable or secure or has a healthy balance, because their shadow is always going to reveal itself. Whether it be about money, because of that could have been their core value or belief system that their mother and father would instill in them. So I noticed this even with my confidence that I've always had. I just realized that it was displaced over time, because anytime I try to display it, it was not just ridiculed, but almost like dismissed, because of people who were not used to going towards their goals and then actually see someone goes towards it and actually accomplish it, and then realize like that can be threatening because to a lot of people, especially growing up, I realized like this is where their insecurities peak, where you are a threat now to their narcissistic templates, foundations. You are a threat to their role of being in what seems to be command. And this happens on so many levels. This is where I get so much insight and clarity on to where, like I said, in the shelter aspect, I was still writing, I was still creating, I was still navigating my own shit. I was ignoring the fact of what was karmic, what was, which a part of my creating was still not so much a risk, but the confidence that I still had to actually endure, to actually, in the process now, knowing the boundaries and that I didn't have and now I've set to where to build more of a self-respect, self-care, self-love, to rebuild my self-esteem. And then what that does, again, is naturally going to mirror back to where people aren't as structured as it is perceived to be. So, because if they were, why would they need to project so much of what they have and what you don't have? Or project so much of like what they feel you are not accomplishing at the time and so forth. And basically also revealing like, a lot of what they wish they can do, but they choose not to. So they have to project that onto someone else or even compare their experiences or their life, their accomplishments or whatever it is. And gradually and slowly, I start to realize like how it becomes more faint. The conversations, even though it's still people behind the scenes still talking shit, but it's more so like the focus has to be as you, how you stay consistent and persistent will eventually reveal the fact of like how people are still really truly stuck because of the inner work they refuse to do or because of the things that they, the shadow work that they continue to ignore, the signs. And what becomes even more clear is that the loop that they're still in, and that's through observation. And like I said, one of the biggest things is that if I'm building a life towards resting, like my core value has shifted and changed, then of course that's going to reveal any and everything that's not built on it. That's why it doesn't matter what type of relationship you in, who has the more money, and I don't give a fuck if you was born into royalty or whatever it is. It's the fact of the awareness around people's core value. That's why someone can have a lot of money, born into money, whatever it is, right? Like I said, I was around people who had money. And it's even relatable to that. It's like where they felt that it eventually revealed the control around them as well. Where, because there was a pivotal time where I came into, if you want to call it awakening or enlightenment, where I didn't even at the time know what the fuck I was going through. And what I mean by that, not in an insanity aspect, like I lost my mind. No, it was more so I was being initiated on my journey. I was, due to being away from that, like thousands of miles away from my, what you would call immediate family, this brought up things in my body to where I was adapting to a new environment. But at the same time, I was unaware of a lot of things emotionally, mentally, even spiritually that was a part of me now, my own evolution, my own internal growth. So I then began to realize like these things revealed a whole lot in a lot of people. Like again, that was a time, 2020, no, 20, it's wild, it was 10 years ago. Well, around this time, 16, 17. And I was like, yo, it became very much aware, like where I start resting more. Now I was still into, like, I was modeling, I was still doing things, but again, the importance of rest, the resting start to reveal in my dream state, like the intentions of somebody. And I didn't know at the time because, when I told them, they were oblivious. But I learned more into being more confident in myself, displaying my gifts, because I realized how much gradually knew I was in something that was controlling, or a person that was very manipulative. And a lot of these things that I realized was also reflecting my internal world, things that I ignored or things that I could no longer ignore. So I had to see it play out through someone. So through that growth, I realized, like, as I start displaying my art, I start to realize, like, this person, it became competitive. It became their insecurities start to get real loud. And again, very accomplished individual, very beautiful person. But it was so much of trying to shape and mold me into something almost them. And it was like, yeah, no. And again, once you have built something off, when you build a foundation of something that's inauthentic and, not built on integrity, the transits, the stars, everything will eventually reveal these very things. And this is how people loop, is because they'll stay in it through whatever unhealthy codependency, through financial dependency, abuse, through, again, all of these things are just telltale signs of certain root chakras, things that I realized, like, as I gradually, in certain connections, it would reveal. One of the most important things was, for me, foundation, the root chakra, the sacral chakra, all these different things. But I still, in a certain way, was realizing, like, I wasn't fighting another person, I was fighting myself. So the more and more, like I tell you, being consistent on this journey with entrepreneurship, arts and writings, it put me, like, I feel like I'm 20 steps ahead, but at the same time, I'm being reminded through other people where they are, meaning the loop, like, that they still continue to go in, but that is so more my inspiration, because I know what I'm walking into. And it's like, even they know, because these people that I don't talk to no more, have no dealings with, it's like things I've said years ago that I was going to accomplish, they see it. And for some, it can be like a missed opportunity, because they assume that at a time where, again, certain things, again, they reveal their core values, they assume that this was more valuable, which, again, to each their own. It's nothing I can change about that. But the more I start to gradually accept my purpose, my going towards, like, my North Star, seeing the internal growth, even when it made sense to nobody else, prioritizing the rest, because I knew through healing the emotions that was repressed over time through relationship dynamics, so forth, even memories that come up around the people, processing the things, seeing where I didn't have the boundaries and so forth, and realizing, like, oh, I can have a change of heart, I can have a change of mind, even if I'm in the middle or midst of something, whether you're father and mother relationship, you can actually have a change of heart and mind simply because you could have got insight or clarity to where, wow, I really have been ignoring my intuition this whole time. And what it does is that it will put you again in a position where you still will have to, everything else that you assume that you built with someone, which really you built with you first, will collapse internally. The emotions will come up around it, the memories, the anger, everything around it, centered around it that you built internally has to come up to be addressed. And naturally what's gonna happen is that you have to counter those things with something in a holistic approach, journaling, writing, whatever you feel called to. And the imagination part about this, the inner child, your gifts will become more heightened and aware through those very places that you experience, let's say a trauma or a dark time in your life. This is where the gifts are, because that's where they begin. This is where you lost sight. And that's why I say when I moved away from my immediate family at that time, I picked up on my gifts again. Because the person I was in a connection with, I knew I had to leave. And at the time, I didn't know why, but I just knew that was a leap of faith, or some call it like a quantum leap. I knew it. And I didn't know how this was gonna happen and that was gonna happen, but I knew now differently what I didn't know then, how I still knew how to step out and step away from things, but it was more so like with not just the confidence, but the self-awareness of now I've rebuilt not just my confidence, but the stability around how the mother wound and the emotions and the financial aspect. Because a lot of things I was stepping into was still a loop. I still had to go through. I still was learning through it, because even through the lessons of the loop, there's still things that you can find within yourself to come back home to. Because all of this is about coming back home to myself. Everything I've said, every individual and so forth, the energies that play out, it's all about coming back home to myself. Having a child, having a son and a daughter. Every part of it showed me the importance of coming back home to myself. Not losing myself in the identity of fatherhood. Losing myself in the idea of other people. And when finding that balance, the books, having the books now, the art, now it's a more focus on, this is your structure. This is where you're going to build a life that was unforeseen at a point in time to the natural eye, even for yourself. But literally the consistency and persistence is going to be something unimaginable. And it's not just in a financial aspect, it's more so like the abundance around every part, from mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And realizing it was me that I was looking for this whole time. Because again, going through, even when I moved away to Cali that time, I was going through that awakening. And even through my affirmations, like I remember things that I would do there, it triggered the other person. And I knew that eventually it wasn't so much of an attack on me. It was so much of them being at their age, because they were an elder to me, or, difference in age, the age gap. It was more so them coming to the realization of how much, do you know how, for some people, do you know how painful it can be, or can see how, some things, you will learn through people to realize how much you've lost out on life, it seems. That's why in certain relationships, how things end karmically can seem like, damn, I feel like I wasted 2-3 years, some people even 10 years, people who have dealt with people who have been narcissists or control freaks or whatever it is, and realize you feel like, dang, I cannot get that time back. But this is where you have to now counter that. And that's what I've done. I had to counter all of that and to realize like it doesn't matter what someone felt they got away with, what they've done and so forth. There still is always going to be a way to where they're going to have to sit with it. The divine is always going to make a way to where people are going to, and this is the grave lesson that a lot of people refuse to learn, no matter their age, is that you're going to be able to see how much people are running from themselves. No matter what their status, creed, and so forth, what they're pressured into doing, do they truly have an internal belief system that reflects their core values? And are those core values something that is sustainable? Are those core values something that has an effect on the children or, generations to come in a holistic way, in an integrative way, in an authentic way, in a way of self-care, self-love, in a balanced and structured way? That's just from my interpretation. That's just from my experience, because again, I can observe and see what everybody else has going on, but for me, again, I'm not everyone. Whatever they're doing has nothing to do with me. And I had to gradually learn that, like I said, from moving that time and moving around and shifting, it's brought so much awareness to how people really move and how much they really are afraid to, like I know people now who are watching me, who not only are seeing things that I'm accomplishing, but it's like unbelievable because, sometimes they see like, how could you have done that without the support or without my support? Because that's one thing that it revealed to me. Because even when certain people gradually try to come back in, I had to respectfully say no. I had to have boundaries, because when you have been persistent with something so long, you have to acknowledge who was there, who's coming in to be supportive in an authentic way, who is coming in to support in your building without expecting anything in return. It reveals a lot to where who really withholds information, who really, and see, that's the thing that I feel like for a lot of people, that they don't know how to come in, and a lot of them fear the rejection in itself. They don't realize, like, I'm only doing what you showed me. At a time in my life, your rejection, I realize now, was for my protection. My rejection is also for your protection, and it's protecting you in a way to where it's like, get the fuck away from me, or like really like protecting you in a way to where like, this ain't that. Like, you have plenty of times to build. We had an opportunity to build together, because some people wanted to stay the same. They wanted to stay in the version of themselves they were used to. So, and that's okay. And that would really shows you, like, for me, the post-traumatic growth aspect of realizing, like, not everyone has traumatic experiences, but for some of the deep lessons that I realized that I was involved in, they rather stay in the PTSD aspect of it, the identity around that, rather than the post-traumatic growth. And some masked it, and some even, like, I had people even try to copy or mimic. But either way, it's like, it's still going to be exposed to where integrity around it, because you can be one thing out in public. That's why I tell you about the passive aggressive thing. You can be one thing out in public, in the public eye, but it's always going to reveal who you truly are within. And that's the beauty of these transits right now. We're at the tail end of Jupiter and Cancer, and these things that are coming up around the emotional, the home in the body and the home externally. So I know exactly what I'm like coming into, like, because these transits over time where I was ignoring things, and now I know the deeper awareness around, like, oh, this was preparing me to renovate the home within me, to see home, family, ancestry, emotions, all those things representing Cancer. See those things from a whole different perspective, to see the bigger picture. Jupiter was expanding, bringing these things up, see the bigger picture and the importance of, like, how to navigate through it to where now Jupiter and Leo is positioning me. Now I can confidently step out with confidence, not overconfidence, but the balance. Because again, the Jupiter and Leo is going to expose so many different things to where, it's summer, people come back outside, and then again, knowing the inner work, knowing the things that I've done within myself, not caring at all for validation or acceptance, and even the fake support, like a lot of things to where realizing this shit be really coming full circle because it's still going to mirror and reflect back those who will just assume that they can just show up or pop up and then actually think that they're going to get access. And even gradually through all of this, it showed me so much of, it's funny, I'm sitting here talking about rest, where this guy's shirt has relax and enjoy and his palm trees in the water. It's like, again, I know what I've been preparing for. It's so obvious whether you see the connections and people you were connected to, or even see the state of humanity to where a lot of people, I realize a lot of what I'm talking about is going to be clarity to initiate people on this journey. Because again, a lot of people have it. There's moments where I realized again where people didn't know they were sabotaging or trying to sabotage what I was doing. But they didn't realize like the only way you can do that is if I allowed it. And that's where I had to gradually be where I wouldn't position myself with people who didn't have knowledge of who they were and would not be genuinely supportive. So that's one thing I realized, like I'm no longer on a karmic cycle or wheel of that shit because it's been very telling and testing. And eventually I tell myself that I get excited because even with building a lot of these things, there's still going